Hello, everyone. I'm Denise O'Malley, and welcome to A Taste of Wellness. As the founder of Udefine Wellness, it's really important to me that we are delivering quality education programs to the community and introducing you to the experts who are part of the Udefine Wellness Network. And today we have a very special program. This is something that's been talked about in a lot of human resource management circles lately, and that is the need to be able to support employees right now after all the transitions that we have been through with grief. So I'm going to share some contact information for you here real quick. So today we have the pleasure of hearing from Peggy Green, owner of The Grief Specialist. And Peggy is my go-to person on anything where it's dealing with grief. And she's got a great program lined up for everyone today. So, and I want to share her contact information with you as well. So without any further ado, and I don't want to take up any more of Peggy's time. Peggy, thank you very much for doing this with us today.
Well, thank you, Denise, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I am very excited to be here. And as you said, this is really a time for this to be discussed. So I'm going to open with a story. I was driving home after work on a Friday night in rush hour traffic. I was lost in thought, thinking about Christmas, just a few weeks away. Christmas is my favorite time of year. It's a special time with my family, being together. Now, ever since my divorce, Christmas mornings are even more meaningful. The joy, the laughter, and the chaos of opening presents are precious moments. My children and I bond at this time. We enjoyed our tradition, a many generational tradition of homemade Swedish tea rings, coffee, and orange juice for breakfast. Christmas is our guaranteed family time together. Now, my thoughts were interrupted when my phone rang. It was my oldest daughter. Rather than hearing her say hello, I heard her say, "He hasn't been feeling well lately," to someone else in the room. I immediately knew she was talking about her brother, my son, Connor. They worked at car dealerships next to each other and were often found spending time together in one or another's showroom. I yelled out to her through the phone, but she didn't answer. My heart started racing, and my mother's instinct told me something was wrong. I pulled off the highway. I hung up the phone and called her back. She immediately answered, and this time she was crying. And through sobs, she said, "Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, but Connor is dead. He killed himself." I hit the steering with both hands and yelled and cried out to God and said, "Why?" This was a flashback of 28 years earlier when my 9-month-old daughter passed away. I already endured the loss of one child. Why? God, this wasn't fair. I was in shock and I couldn't think. I turned my car around on that highway and headed towards where my son had taken his last breath. It was the second longest drive of my life. Hi, I'm Peggy Green. And after my son died, I became an author and wrote Life After Child Loss, the Mother Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. Became a public speaker and a grief coach. Because of my experience going through my grief, I knew no one deserved to be able to do this alone. So my mission is to help those who are grief-stricken move through grief to healing and live fulfilling lives filled with peace, joy, and happiness. And for the next 45 minutes, I will be helping you understand grief and mourning and share 3 tips to help you navigate your loss while on the job. Tip 1, keep an open line of communication with your employee. Number 2, educate others on how they can help you and how you can help yourself. And 3 is to conduct self-care. This is a workshop, and we built this as a workshop. So for those of you who are live with me today, it's interactive. I'm doing a drawing at the end of this workshop. It is super easy to be eligible. All you need to do is answer some questions throughout the presentation. I bet everyone can do that, right? For the drawing, we will be using the chat feature to answer questions, and the winner will be announced at the end and must be present to win. So with each question, each response, you'll be added into the drawing. And Denise will be drawing for a copy of Life After Child Loss, the Mother Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. When I wrote this, it's my personal journey with tips on how I survived the loss of my son. First, anniversaries, holidays. Other topics that I cover are navigating what to do with your loved one's possessions, how to create a memorial, and even exploring your spirituality. So I'm going to kick this off with my first question. I love getting to know the folks in the audience. I think this also helps you to know who you're with today. We are creating a unique opportunity to have conversations at work around grief, which can be a taboo topic. These conversations create a family. I am curious as to why you are here. So this is a three-part question, and you may have more than one answer. So typing your answer in the chat box. Is everybody ready? So part one, have you personally experienced the loss of a loved one and returned to work? If that is you, put a 1 in the chat feature. Part two, have you been around a coworker who has come back to work after a death? If this is you, go ahead and put a number 2. And the third part here is, as a supervisor or manager, have you had a grieving employee return to work? If this is you, please put a 3 in the chat feature. Great. So we're off to a good start. I see a lot of 1, 2s, and 3s, and I know you're with me. Thank you. Now we know a little bit about each other. I'm going to start by helping you to understand grief and mourning. What is grief? Grief is the internal thoughts and feelings you have when a loved one dies. It's a strong feeling of sadness. It's natural to experience grief. It's normal to miss a loved one, and there's no timeline to grief. Grief is a journey. It's not a short trip. In reality, it is a lifelong experience. And how you learn to manage your grief now will affect how you navigate your future losses. It's almost a guarantee that what you're going through now will not be your only experience. You'll never reach the end, but the peaks and valleys will lessen. The frequency of heartache will diminish, and you will learn to embrace memories that once caused pain. Shortly after loss, you can enter into an acute phase of grief, signs and symptoms that will carry over into work and personal. So acute grief is that sudden loss and characterized by physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual symptoms. So I want to share some of those symptoms with you right now. Pay close attention because I want you to note how many you're experiencing or have experienced. So symptoms, acute physical grief. Think of the physical. So trouble initiating or maintaining sleep, shortness of breath, lack of desire to eat, headache, digestive issues, those things that you're experiencing physically. Acute mental grief, forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, slow thinking, wandering around, or even feeling like you're in a trance. Emotional acute grief, fear, guilt, anger, apathy, loneliness. And then spiritual grief can feel like a lack of purpose, lowered self-esteem, becoming withdrawn and isolated, becoming very negative and unforgiving of others. Next question. So how many symptoms of grief from the list I just mentioned are you experiencing? Go ahead and put that number in the chat box. Now remember, answering in the chat box will give you one more entry into the drawing for a copy of Life After Child Loss, the Mother Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. Thank you. I see that everybody's participating. So I want to share a quote with you. Grief only exists where love lived first, by Francesca Cox. So we're going to talk about mourning as well. Mourning is the outward expression of grief. And examples of that are preparing for a funeral, wearing black, sharing memories about a loved one. And these can be some of the rituals associated with a loss. There is no formal guide for mourning, and the process can vary from person to person. And it allows people to form long-term memories of a loved one and helps you to adapt and learn new ways to carry on without a person you cared about deeply. Mourning can be lengthy and painful, but it's a moving part through your grief. It's complex and complicated, and grief and mourning, it's no wonder that returning to work is fearful and full of anxiety and dread. As a grief coach, I hear time and time again from others who are grieving that they don't want to work and there's fear and why they have to go back to work. The most common reason they return to work is financial. And second is the fear of losing their job for being too long to deal with their grief. Or it could even be a combination of both. Whatever the reason, returning to work can be stressful. Now, as you approach the time to return to work, you may be wondering, how are you going to deal with those emotions? Will your coworkers look away? Will they be compassionate? Will they judge you? All these thoughts and questions are very normal. I want to share with you my first experience after losing my daughter when I returned to work. The company I worked for was an international and multi-million dollar company. I was in management and being considered, there we go, for a promotion, and which would require me to move out of state. At the reception following the funeral, my regional manager approached me and asked me if I was ready to take the promotion and move. That would mean leaving my family, support system, and heritage. Well, I knew in my heart this would not be the right move. I told him yes. Why? Because I felt pressure to return to work and climb the corporate ladder. And I'll tell you, to this day, I shake my head and wonder what inspired him to ask that question on that day after I just buried my child. So I returned to that 50+ hour a week job just 3 days later. Not that I wanted to, it was that my husband and I did need the money. And I was told my time off and paid bereavement was over. It was corporate policy. In my naivete, I did as I was told. And then compounding that with the reaction and support I get from my manager. Now you could be asking yourself as you return, will your boss be understanding? Will you be criticized? I want to share something from David Kessler, a fellow grief authority. He puts this so eloquently. Grievers told me that what was most disruptive to them is they felt they needed to go back to work soon and they got judged on it. Now, ultimately, it's not the policies, but it's the human component and how the managers and coworkers react to people, which makes that transition either difficult or easy. I'm going to share my experience also with my second loss because they're dramatically different. I work in a small financial firm with 3 employees, one of which was me. My son died on a Friday. His funeral was the following Friday. I was not expected to return to work at all during that time. I was to take the time off, spend time with my other children, and work through my grief. 2 weeks later, in between Christmas and New Year's, I made the choice and asked to return to work. The timing was good because I was the only one in the office. I was able to focus and grieve when needed. My boss asked me if working was what I wanted and needed. And I said yes. And she paid me for all that time. All she wanted me to do was get what I needed, and I did. I want to point out it wasn't the size of the company that made a difference. It was my supervisor's understanding and compassion. Today, we are here to help change the paradigm of how employers and employees think about grief in the workplace. So far, we have spent some time wrapping our heads around grief and mourning, including some of the acute symptoms of grief. I would like to now move into our actual steps in helping employees and employers to navigate loss at work. So our first step is to have an open line of communication with your employer, more specifically, your supervisor and human resources department. So to start that process, schedule a meeting in person to share with them the loss you've experienced. Tell them how you're feeling and you realize it can impact your job performance. Explain that you want to work and that it is a temporary situation. After sharing your challenges, it's a good time to include your solution as well. When they hear your ideas, they can support you. They can only help based on the information you provide. Tell them what you're doing to help yourself. When they actively know you're working through your grief, they will be able to make accommodations better suited for you. Communication, however tough it may be, is essential. In this meeting, ask for what you want. Be specific with your request. And here are some options. Maybe have limited hours until you feel comfortable back at work. Maybe some of your responsibilities can be transferred to a coworker for a short period of time. And if you experience those acute symptoms of grief we talked about earlier, maybe you want to be able to step into an unoccupied conference room or office in order to process your thoughts and feelings. And it might even be a possibility that you can work from home and be in the office for critical meetings, events, or deadlines. You know what will help you. Make a list and ask for it. Take the list with you into the meeting to keep focused and organized. And I believe by approaching your employer in this manner, you will get the support you need in a time of stress. Unfortunately, there are not laws that guarantee time off for bereavement. Each company has their own policies, and it is to their benefit to help employees, though, because you feel cared for and supported. Grief-related losses cost US companies as much as 75 billion, that's with a B, annually. It is time for corporations to take notice of this hidden cost and reduce it by being kind, caring, and compassionate to grieving employees. Before we move on to our next step, here's your opportunity to add to your name for the drawing of Life After Child Loss, the Mother Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. Type into the chat box your biggest takeaway from keeping the lines of communication open with your employer. Our second step to navigating your grief while on the job is to educate yourself and your coworkers on how to help you. Thinking ahead will make your return to work and is going to be easier and make it less painful. Healing from the death of a loved one is a long, slow process, but getting back into a routine is an important step in your journey. Your healing and ability to return to work starts with you. Prior to your return to work, ask your supervisor to have a grief specialist, a grief coach like myself, come into the office and teach coworkers how to best support you. It will alleviate some of the awkward questions and circumstances, such as, should you leave your pictures up of your children if your coworker lost their child? Well, in fact, taking down your pictures can do more harm than good. Your coworker will notice the change and quite possibly feel guilty for wanting to display pictures of their deceased child. I suggest not to delay the inevitable or try to protect the griever because it doesn't. And when you return to work and are not ready to talk about your loss, ask a close coworker to act as your buffer, as your shield. And while other coworkers' questions are well-meaning, sometimes they can be overwhelming. When a question arises, you can politely respond by saying, Jane, my friend is fielding questions for me right now. And be sure to inform Jane of what you want others to know. If you're open to talking, it's also important that you have some responses for those tough questions or difficult moments. If it may come up that you have questions you don't want to answer, and that's okay. And you can be prepared by responding, I'm not ready to talk about it. Thank you for asking. If you find yourself in one of those grief moments, have this script handy. I need a few minutes to process how I'm feeling, and then have an immediate exit available without an explanation. When we talk about managers, they are trained to celebrate births, birthdays, and even handle illness. But when it comes to death, they fall silent and avert their gaze. The default approach is to try to spare the office from grief. We've already learned that you don't want to, but you're leaving the bereaved employee alone for a few days and then hoping they'll return expediently to work. This approach causes something called conspiracy of silence surrounding death, a conspiracy that does not, well, It does more harm than good. And then when managers do finally come around and say something, it's highly likely that it will come out poorly. However, be open to looking at their motivation and that it is coming from their heart. Even in your state of grief, remember to extend compassion and grace to others as you want them to do the same for you. With that being said, I want to offer some things to say to a coworker, and offers things that are not helpful and things you can do for them. So pay attention to these as it's another opportunity to be included in the drawing for a copy of Life After Child Loss, the Mother's Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. So here are three things not to say to coworker, and they are not helpful. One, you're still young, so you can still have another child. Get married again. Two, everything happens for a reason. And three, time heals everything. Here are three things to say to a coworker that's helpful in their grief. One, I'm glad you're back and I'm here for you. Two, how are you today? Is better than how are you? It allows the grievers to honestly respond more than I'm fine. And my favorite is number three. I would love to hear more about your son, your loved one, whenever that feels better for you. I want to respect your privacy and support you when you are ready. And finally, I want to offer three things you can do for a coworker that they will appreciate and be so thankful for. One, be ready to sit in silence with them. Just be. Two, offer to pick them up or take them home from work. And three, provide them with healthy snacks. I've given you some good ideas to get you started on what to say and do for someone who is grieving. You personally may have had other experiences. And what I would like is your advice on more ideas. So type into the chat something you have said or something that was said to you that was helpful. Just last week, I had a complimentary teletherapy grief breakthrough session with a woman who was returning to work 5 weeks after losing her daughter. She saw a workshop similar to this, and she signed up for my 10-week coaching program. She is now confident she can handle her grief at work, feels equipped to handle inquiries about her loss, and already has a meeting scheduled with her supervisors. Co-workers can support you financially because financial hardship can result from these funeral expenses, loss of an income earner, or the inability to work. Companies and coworkers have been known to come together in unique and creative ways to help a fellow employee while grieving. One way to financially support them is to establish a GoFundMe account for the benefit of the person who is bereaved. Can't meet those financial obligations. This is a simple and easy way to express your sympathies as well. And you may need additional time off. Your company may not be in the position to pay for an extended leave of absence. However, your fellow employees can help. Many corporations permit accrued vacation time or personal time off to be donated to allow someone to have extra time away from work. So this is what I have for teaching you how to help yourself and how others can help you. And our third and final step is self-care. Self-care is essential in your healing. Death and loss are part of that circle of life and a painful reality. It is guaranteed to happen at some time. People react to it uniquely, and the effects may remain for months or years, but it's your response that impacts your ability to live a fulfilling and productive life. You have a choice. Listen to what your body needs and listen to what your soul needs. Remember those 4 areas of acute grief: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Here, we connect the dots and circle back around to managing them with self-care. When you are taking care of yourself, you are healing. I want to share an analogy with you. So think of a caterpillar. A caterpillar can climb up onto a small little branch and it wraps itself up in a cocoon and puts itself in this place of darkness, knowing that they're going to come out of that better. But while they're in the midst of that darkness and changing and growing, they don't know what it's going to be like. They feel like they're lost and it's a struggle. That's the same with your grief. You step into this and you have questions and don't know what the future looks like, but you pursue, you take a step, you do something every single day. Now the caterpillar has morphed inside and they start to beat their wings and they're gaining strength and getting the strength to get out of that cocoon because they know that there's something, that there's light on the outside of that, and they continue. And just like you continue to beat and move forward and do the things necessary to get through your grief. Finally, one day that caterpillar pops open and he's a beautiful butterfly and his wings are strong enough to carry him away. And for you, one day you're going to look back and say, I don't recognize myself because I have come through this. So be that butterfly and you won't recognize yourself, but you have come through this. So you may not realize the connection between these 4 areas of healing and the process. So I believe to fully heal, you must restore all areas of your health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So let's start with tips on taking care of your physical health. Now, regular exercise can have a profoundly positive impact on depression and anxiety. It also relieves stress, improves memory, helps with digestion, and boosts your overall mood. It can improve your ability to focus and offer a sense of control. Do you recognize these as acute physical symptoms of grief? And the cool thing is that you do not have to be a fitness fanatic to reap the benefits. Ignoring your physical health will not make the illnesses and challenges go away. As a matter of fact, the longer you deny it, the higher the risk of more extensive physical damage. And when you don't take care of your grief, it's unresolved grief, it can manifest in complicated health challenges and even mental illnesses. There are 4 types of exercise: aerobic, strength, stretch, and balance. They're all important components of health, but in the essence of time, I will be covering aerobic exercise only. I wish I could share all of my knowledge, but if I did, we'd be here for more than 45 minutes. So reach out to me if you want more information. And as a reminder, if you're new to exercise, please remember to consult with your physician before beginning any exercise routine. There's some hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine, which are released with an elevated heart rate from aerobic exercise. They reduce your stress and can help release anger and guilt. This helps with both mental and emotional symptoms of grief. Are you seeing how interrelated your 4 major areas of health are in your healing? Some examples of aerobic exercise are brisk walking, jogging, running, tennis, dancing, or swimming. What's really cool is you get to choose. Now, however, I do find for most people, walking is where they begin. The recommendation is to reach 10,000 steps per day. You can download an app on your phone or buy a fitness tracker to check your steps and measure your progress. Brenda, who started working with me after a 29-year-old son took his life, could not believe I recommended she get off the couch and out of the house. She felt like I was trying to force her into something she did not want to do. She was struggling with even the thought of walking out the door. I suggested she started by setting a goal of walking around the block as part of her morning routine. She agreed and committed to doing it for 1 week. She logged her activity every day and noted how she felt after she walked. When we met the following week, she felt lighter, and she admitted walking improved her mood and she had more energy. People always ask me this question, Peggy, what is the best exercise? I answer them and tell them the best exercise is one that you will do and be consistent with. Not stop and start, but be consistent with. So just get started. Let's transition now and discuss the role nutrition has in physical health and your grief journey. As you well know, losing a loved one is incredibly stressful. You're more likely to crave foods that are high in fat, sugar, and salt. And they're easy, they're convenient foods to grab cookies or chips and use them as a way to make you feel better. Is this you? If yes, you are not alone. Those comfort foods can make you feel better in the short run. However, in the long run, they'll feel much worse. They affect your blood sugar, your energy, and your mental focus. And then heavy amounts of cortisol, the stress hormone, is released and contributes back to lack of interest in eating food, headaches, difficulty sleeping. And these foods are also attributed to weakening your immune system, making you have colds, heart conditions, oxidative stress that causes so much damage. I want to share with you what healthy looking eating looks like. Ultimately, the goal is to follow this as closely as possible. However, give yourself some grace if you do not. Nutrition is part of your healing and just a piece of it. So pay attention to your gut. Foods and trans fats, excess calories, additives, and salt contribute to inflammation and affects your gut health. Your gut is also considered to be your second brain, which controls emotional and mental wellness. Now, to help you get the vitamins, minerals to really help you get through this, your body needs to repair physically. It is recommended to get 9 to 13 servings of fruits and veggies per day. Everyone, make a fist, look at it. Can you imagine eating 9 to 13 servings of food that size in one day? I do well in getting maybe 7, and that's a struggle some days. So I bridge that gap with nutritional capsules. I doubled up on them after my son died, and I've been sick just 2 days since he passed away, which is quite uncommon for someone who's gone through what I have. There's so much more, and again, I can't cover it all. What I can say in a nutshell is stop eating food that comes out of a box that's processed. Instead, eat food that is picked from a tree or harvested from the ground. Some great ideas for physical health and exercise and nutrition. Now let's take a peek at mental health. For your mental health, I recommend having regular breaks scheduled every 90 minutes on your calendar with an alarm. By doing so, it prevents you from pushing yourself to the edge of mental and physical fatigue. The breaks don't need to be long. 5 to 7 minutes will improve your productivity, refresh your mind, and give you energy. Be extremely purposeful with what you do with those breaks. Don't go onto social media. Be sure to get up and away from your workstation. Walk. Go outside if possible. And breathe. So Denise, I think have you gotten the box breathing? Thank you about that.
You didn't send me the box breathing.
Okay, that's quite all right. We've had some technical issues together. So I've shared this box breathing technique with my clients. And one of them, she found herself becoming anxious while on the job. It is easy to do and can be done anywhere. I'm going to teach it to you now. Guess what? Participating in this will give you another entry into the drawing for a copy of Life After Child Loss, the Mother's Survival Guide to Cope and Find Joy. So to receive the full experience, if you can, take your shoes off. I just slipped mine off and put them flat on the ground. Now sit up back in your chair and sit up tall, your sternum going to the ceiling. Relax your shoulders and remove anything from your hands. Place your hands flat on your thighs. Here's the box technique. Think of your breathing pattern as a box. So in the upper left-hand corner, draw a horizontal line to the right, and that represents your inhaling. Now draw a line straight down. That represents holding. And then come back across. That's exhaling. And the final line is to hold. So what you want to do is this is going to be done for a count of 4 and slowly. So we're going to do this together. So I'm going to draw this across. So you're going to inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and just hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so when you inhale, you really want to fill your lungs, and then when you empty, you want to really, when you exhale, empty those lungs. So repeat the box breathing 5 to 10 times. And this slows your heart rate down, clears your thoughts, and reduces anxiety. It can be done anywhere, anytime when you're feeling overwhelmed. You can do it in the car. So how are you feeling now after doing the box breathing? Put in the chat box how you're feeling to have another entry into the drawing for a copy of Life After Child Loss. Let's spend a few minutes talking about your emotional health here. Okay? Emotionally, it's important to allow yourself to grieve. Give yourself permission to cry, feel numb or angry, to simply feel. Avoid self-judgment and shoulding. I should be feeling this way. I shouldn't be thinking that. You will help on yourself when you stop shoulding yourself. And those emotions are also the soul's barometer, the compass for navigating the feel bads. Have you been told that you have negative emotions? It is important that you do not think of your emotions as being negative or even positive for that matter. When you associate emotions as being positive or negative, you judge yourself and discount your grief. And we don't want to do that. So instead, think of your emotions and whether you feel good or bad. That's not judgment, just acceptance of having an emotion. Emotions can and will change quickly, happy to sad. They are your signals in your body caused by hormones and neurotransmitters of this change. In today's society, emotions are often caused by triggers such as a thought, a picture, or an event. Now we're going to take that one step down. Feelings come from your emotions. They're longer lasting. They're conscious experiences of emotions. Okay, emotions are the things that are caused, and your feelings are what you have control over. You can control whether you feel sad. And feeling is the story you tell yourself. And this is a huge step in navigating your grief. You can continue to tell yourself that you will never, ever, ever recover from your loss, or you can say, I can do this. I want to do this. So I'm thankful I get to work with folks who walk through their loss journey. Just last week, I was working with Sue, who lost her husband 4 months ago. She was feeling guilty, and one of those that told me that she couldn't release her guilt. She was sleeping a lot and had much anxiety. When she first started working with me, she was afraid of being judged. She felt others were blaming her, and she didn't deserve to drop the guilt. I shared this with her. I shared the 3 C's. I love this one. It applies to so many circumstances. You cannot control others. She could not control what her husband did. 2, you cannot cure. She could not cure what her husband was thinking and doing. And 3, you did not cause them to do what they did. No matter what you think, you cannot control, cause, or cure. And the more you think the same thoughts over and over, we're talking about, those things in your mindset. These thoughts literally form pathways in your brain by connecting neurons over and over again. It's like a well-worn path through a field. If you walk the same path time and time and time again, the grass is worn down. The same thing happens in your brain as you reinforce the thoughts that you experience, like, I'll never get over it. I'll never get over it. Well, you continue to do that. It becomes ingrained. But your brain is meant to protect you from harm. It's exceptionally good at doing that. It keeps you from pain, even though it's necessary to move through grief. It has immense power in controlling your response, anger, guilt, and sadness. And the way I've found to rewire and reroute those thoughts so that, if you have it, you can redirect it, is to use affirmations. I have 10 affirmations I do every single day. They set the stage for the way I think throughout the day and are positive thoughts I go to sleep with every night. My favorite affirmation is, I am a great mother and always will be. Now that covers our emotional health. Our last area of health associated with is acute symptoms of spiritual grief. Spiritual health is a personal matter involving values, integrity, and compassion that supports you, your purpose, and your mission of life. What are some examples of spiritual health? Well, spiritual wellness provides us with systems of faith and beliefs, values, ethics, and you may volunteer, make social contributions, belong to a group, have fellowship, be optimistic, forgiveness, and have expressions of compassion. Remember, those were signs, and now we are able to give you good spiritual health. So many people associate spirituality with a higher power. Now, a higher power is a supreme deity or other conceptions of God. Maybe you don't believe in God, but that there is something bigger than you. It's not, it's what you turn to explain the unexplainable. Your higher power is what gives you peace and rest. I've seen this happen time and time again. The death of a loved one changes a person. It changes their inner being, who they are and what they believe. Those who once believed in God now scream out in anger, asking why. The pain is so great and the understanding so difficult that they lose their faith in God. Now, there may be others who did not have any sort of faith in God, but are drawn to Him in difficult times. Someone who is grieving may not have anywhere else to turn. They may come to terms that they cannot survive the death of their loved one without a supreme being that gives them strength, courage, and joy. I recommend you explore the options and see what works for you. Now, a form of spirituality also is daily gratitude. When you find positive things to focus on, you can change the way you view the world. I still start my day by journaling 5 things that I'm grateful for. They can be simple as the sun rising or a new day, the flowers, the snow on the mountain, or the rain, a bed, clothing, and food. And some days it may even be the same thing 5 times over, and that's okay. Try this gratitude practice for 30 days and see how you think about your circumstances, the world around you, and the people you're spending time with. So these are the 4 areas of self-care. There's so much more, and that again would be a workshop on its own. I have another question for you. What is one tip from self-care you will incorporate into your healing journey or share with someone who has need? Place that in the chat box. And the last question to be entered into the drawing. What is the name of the book? Big book being offered in the drawing. Enter the title and submit your answers in the next 2 questions as Denise is putting together the names in the drawing. We will be announcing the winner in just a few minutes, and be present. To date, we've covered a lot of ground. We started learning about grief and mourning and some of the symptoms of it. Once we learned about that, we talked about the 3 tips to navigate your loss while on the job as an employer, employee, and co-worker. To recap, those tips are keeping an open line of communication with your employer, teaching coworkers how they can help, and wrapped up with self-care and physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. I want to thank you for being here today. You have been an amazing audience, and because of your outstanding participation, I can see it in the chat box. I want to give you a copy of 21 things to say, not to say, and do for someone who is grieving. Yes, there we go. Denise has brought it up. Visit my website, thegriefspecialist.com/21 things to get a free downloadable copy. And finally, if you find yourself struggling or want to move forward, I highly recommend working with a grief coach. The traditional methods of grieving no longer serve those who are experiencing loss. As we have learned today, returning to work is a tough road to travel, and work is just one piece of the life after loss experience. Grief is a journey on a highway. You will travel that journey whether you participate or not. You have the choice to take the express lane, accelerating your healing and making it smoother. And as a grief coach, will give you tools and resources to navigate that highway. Can you do it yourself? Of course you can. And yes, it will be much longer, bumpier, and a big process than it has to be. As a grief coach, I personally work with coaches to help me in different seasons of my life. There's always room for improvement, someone to walk beside you, someone to help you. And as this, you deserve to move through your grief towards healing, live a fulfilling life, and experience peace, joy, and happiness. So, some things to consider if you're looking at a grief coach. Are they, number one, are they knowledgeable and experienced? I have experienced a tremendous amount of loss. And after each child loss, I returned to work and successfully treaded the waters. Two, does the person you're considering use the tools they recommend? I know that everything that I shared with you works because I have personally used them. And three, are they passionate about helping you? I know what it's like to experience loss. I know this is where I am supposed to be. And if you are interested in learning more, schedule your complimentary grief breakthrough session. And you can find the registration on my website. So here we go. This is the final moment that we've been waiting for. Denise has our winner. Drum roll, please. And Denise, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Before I name names, I'm just want to say, Peggy, thank you. The information you had in this video. This is one of those videos you're going to want to go back to the recording because there's so much information to unpack. The winner for this drawing, and then I'm going to share something else with everyone. It edged out. It was close, but Sarah C is the one who came out ahead in the numbers. So we have Sarah's contact information. I will make sure that you have it, Peggy, so that we can you can send that book to her. So fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. But before you jump into yours, and thank you so much for everybody for participating. As Denise said, listen to the link to the video and share it because this information is so valuable. There's people that need it. Share it with people at work, with your friends. And again, I want to thank you for being here because you're helping to shift that paradigm. You're supporting yourself, an employee or coworker as they navigate their loss while on the job. And congratulations to those who participated. And Sarah, congratulations.
And I want to tell you where you can see more of Peggy. I invite you to go visit the You Define Wellness website. I'm not going to get into a presentation about what we're all about, but I want to introduce you to us through our website. It's youdefinewellness.com. That's YOU definewellness.com. And if you go to the section that says YDW recorded, we have a bunch of resources for you on here, videos that we have recorded over the years, and you will see that Peggy has some information about the health coaching part of her business, but she has also got what is grief coaching on here. And soon we will be adding this video there as well. So you'll be able to access it at any time. So we invite you to go to our website and browse around. You'll find information on all 8 dimensions of well-being, as well as activities. And I got to tell you, there's some exercise and meditation activities that I will go to, and that's where I'm getting my meditation and my fitness refreshers when I just want to do something quick at home. So with that being said, we will leave, for those who want to chat with Peggy, we will leave the room open as soon as we end the recording. But I want to say a couple things. First of all, Peggy, thank you so much for doing this. It's the journey you have been through. You are in a club that nobody wants to belong to, and you have done it with grace and helping others out of it. But and for those who are watching the recordings, I hope that this has been of value to you. And if you feel a need to work with a grief coach, and I wholeheartedly encourage it, please reach out to Peggy because she's the person who you're going to want to work with. And with that being said, we'll end the recording, and we thank everyone for participating on this recording today.